Okay, my screen is also visible now. We will see the differences between the SDLC and point-to-point protocol. What is the basis for comparison for this SDLC protocol? I have yesterday told you many companies are utilizing SDLC protocol as a proprietary protocol. Say for IBM is utilizing synchronous link control. Okay, sorry. IBM utilizes synchronous data link control SDLC protocol. IBM has its own proprietary SNA architecture, simple network architecture for providing the connectivity for the terminals. The SNA architecture utilizes at the data link layer the SDLC protocol, which is one of the subset of SDLC protocol. Typically, whenever we are talking about Cisco at data link layer, many of the Cisco devices are utilizing SDLC protocols. You can utilize PPP protocol over various Cisco devices, but you have to configure the PPP protocol separately. What is that particular configuration? I am going to show you this in the lecture itself. But PPP protocol, previously it was included in the Cisco protocols, but nowadays at the data link layer, various devices are utilizing SDLC protocol at the data link layer for many Cisco devices. That's why SDLC protocol are still useful in many of the devices. But there is always an encapsulation of multiple protocols, encapsulation of PPP protocol with SDLC protocol, encapsulation of PPP protocol over Ethernet protocol, which is typically utilized for our broadband communication. PPP over Ethernet can be termed as a network layer protocol, whereas PPP is the data link layer protocol. That is one of the difference in the utilization associated with various PPP devices as well as SDLC devices, or the devices which follows SDLC protocol and point-to-point protocol. One of the major differences yesterday we have considered SDLC protocol utilizes bit-oriented configuration or bit stuffing, whereas PPP protocol is known as a byte-oriented protocol, where byte is stuffed or a typical escape character is stuffed in order to avoid the data redundancy. That is one of the difference in SDLC as well as the PPP type of protocol. Typically, SDLC protocols are suitable only for synchronous media, whereas in case of our digital communication, we have seen that a proper synchronization in the transmitter and receiver is required in order to recover the proper bits that are transmitted at a very high rate. And the overheads actually provides the efficient communication, or the quality of service associated with the digital communication is quite good whenever we are maintaining a proper synchronization. But again, the cost of communication goes on increasing, and huge amount of data whenever needs to be transmitted with the synchronous media, the amount of time or the throughput associated with the communication media is quite low, and that's one of the drawback associated with the devices that are utilizing SDLC protocol. In case of PPP, synchronous as well as asynchronous media can be utilized. It's not that always acknowledgement of one particular packet is required or one particular frame is required. It can be large number of frames and a single acknowledgement associated with those large number of frames. That particular configuration can be utilized, and that's why PPP is one of the protocol that can be utilized for WAN, wide area network, or for providing the connectivity to the various consumers of a internet service provider. The modifications associated with the PPP can be utilized. The next major difference is the authentication. There is no provision of authentication in SDLC. That's why Cisco devices are quite simple to operate, since authentication is not at all required for proper configurations of the devices used at the data link layer. But PPP protocol provides a proper authentication, and that's the correct standardized technique used to provide authorized access to the internet services. And that's why nowadays everywhere we are utilizing the proper authentication protocol supported at the point to point level. The next is dynamic addressing. In case of HDLC protocol, the addresses associated with the devices are always fixed. You cannot change the addresses. And whenever the addresses, you cannot change the addresses, it's quite easy to find out the circuit path that is necessary for the packets that are divided at the network layer, and the data can be properly dumped into the communication media. But if the number of devices are quite large, it's very difficult to maintain the static addressing scheme for the various devices at the HDLC protocol. And that's why in case of PPP, a dynamic addressing is utilized. A dynamic addressing is utilized by utilizing one additional protocol just above the PPP protocol, that is known as the dynamic host configuration protocol. Whenever you are connecting to the service provider checks your authentication. If your authentication is correct, then a message is obtained to the user that you are registered on the network. The meaning of this registered on the network is the DHCP protocol that is used at the server side or at the service provider side is allocating an IP address having a specified leased time. And if this particular lease time is infinite, then that IP address is permanently assigned to the network. And this particular type of dynamic addressing is possible with the support of DHCP protocol just above the PPP protocol. But DHCP protocol is required. How that DHCP protocol works? Whenever we are connecting and we have some configurations of L2 and L3 type of devices. If you don't want to know the IP addresses that are associated with your terminal, that is, the static allocation of the IP address is not at all possible for your end, then you have to utilize a DHCP server in the network configuration. In the network, you have to utilize DHCP. This DHCP actually allocates the IP address to the devices. The IP address that is allocated may be the internal configuration supported, or the IP address configuration may be a specified fixed range IP address allocation. But remember that in point-to-point protocol, dynamic addressing is utilized. So if a terminal is allocated an IP address, after certain time duration, if the leasing of that particular IP address is over, automatically another IP address is allocated to the same device. And whenever the IP address is allocated, then only the terminal is part of the network. This is true again for the point-to-point protocol over Ethernet that we are utilizing. So you are having a broadband connection, unlimited data, the broadband is always on. You are always provided with a proper authentication, that is username and password. Unless and until user and your password is properly authenticated, you are not at all allocated an IP address. Whenever you are allocated an IP address dynamically by the service provider, then only you are part of the network. And that's how actually that simplifies the allocations or maintaining the networks in the network of network, that is internet. Typically, then the next important difference is HDLC can be implemented in point to point as well as multi-point configuration. The multi-point configuration, point to multi-point, multi-point to multi-point, multi-point to single point. All these configurations are possible with the support of HDLC protocol. But in case of point-to-point protocol, the name itself suggests it's a point-to-point configuration only. It's used to connect only 2 points. Typically for your broadband, used to connect your data terminal at home to the service provider. These two only points. The service provider may be connected to the network of network, but point-to-point protocol over Ethernet always connects only 2 points. Your data terminal and the service providers. You can call it as a server. Typically, whenever I'm saying the HDLC protocol are de facto proprietary protocol that are utilized with the Cisco devices. But the compatibility with other protocols cannot be operated. HDLC protocol cannot be operated with non-Cisco devices. Non-Cisco devices. But the PPP protocol, it's not at all necessary that you must have all the devices. You must have Cisco modem, you must have Cisco concentrated. That is not at all the requirement with point-to-point protocol. Any sort of modem, of course, the modem based on certain standards, which I have told you, the modems based on, typically it is a dial-up type of modems that were utilized to first provide the connectivity with the support of PPP protocol. You can utilize any type of modem, any type of dial-up modem. Yesterday I have told you the typical configuration. How actually PPP protocol is your terminal connected to the modem that is connected to the telephone line. Specifically, I am taking the example of dial-up modem as well as the broadband type of modem. Your terminal connected with a serial interface. With a serial interface. This is a very important term. With a serial interface. Serial interface connected to the modem. Serially, the data is inserted into the communication media with the support of modem serial port and connected serial port of your data terminal. Here, this particular serial configuration, even if whenever you are utilizing the modem that is connected to the USB, it's again a universal serial bus. It differs only whenever your point-to-point connectivity is achieved with PPP over Ethernet. So it's PPP over Ethernet is typically a network type of protocol. It's not at all a data link protocol. But at this moment, you can just say that PPP is interoperable with all types of devices which support networking function. Typically, the PPP configuration is utilized for the Windows type of configuration. The equivalent protocol for Linux or Unix for PPP protocol is SLIP, Serial in Line Protocol. SLIP protocol, Serial in Line Protocol. That SLIP protocol is equivalent to the PPP protocol. SLIP protocol is still utilized for all the Unix terminals for providing the connectivity in between the 2 points, long distance points, such as providing the connectivity with internet service providers. These are the important difference points. Nowadays, previously in CCNA examination also, there were some questions based on the PPP protocol, but from last year, from 2017 onwards, 2018 onwards, no questions on PPP protocols are asked in the CCNA examination. Instead of PPP protocol, some questions on creating the SDLC configuration is typically used because CCNA entirely is supporting the proprietary Cisco devices. And that's why SDLC protocol, if you want to give CCNA, then you must know the configurations that are associated. But if you can also utilize, there may be questions in the CCNA to configure the PPP over Cisco devices. PPP can be configured over Cisco devices also. So these are the typical differences in SDLC and PPP protocol. PPP protocol typically was standardized It was initially started in 1991 at the CERN laboratories. The CERN laboratories modified the configurations that are associated with the SLIP protocol. Initially, the Unix configuration was utilized at the CERN laboratories. Then, de facto standard PPP was adopted, and this particular PPP protocol was dominant player until ADSL modems were developed. Till that time, up to 1999. In 1999, the development associated with the ADSL modem took place, and that gave rise to huge data rate that can be propagated over the existing telephone lines also. And that's the, but for that also we were utilizing point-to-point protocol. The PPP protocol can be configured by utilizing ISDN lines. The PPP protocol can be configured by using the asynchronous serial connections like old telephone lines. That just now I have told you. The previously we were utilizing dial-up modems. Dial-up modems were interfaced with the telephone lines. Then, as the data rate goes on increasing, the modifications, the support of integrated services digital network, that is ISDN. ISDN was developed. For that, ISDN modems were developed. But if you are utilizing dial-up modem at one end, you have to utilize dial-up modem at the other end. If you are utilizing ISDN modem at one end, then you have to utilize ISDN modem at the other end for point-to-point protocols. Remember this. The two different types of protocols that were supported at the data link layer for the OSI standard are the MCP protocol and the LCP protocol. LCP protocol actually provides us setup and negotiate control options in the data link layer. After finishing setting up, the network control protocol is utilized. That is, it negotiates the typical optional configurations and facilitates for the network layer. That is, hand over the data to the network layer. It makes sure the IP and other protocols can correctly operate on a point-to-point link. That is quite important. The PPP protocol, the one of the subset of PP or the sub protocol of PPP protocol is the network control. The first is link control, second is network control. So the requirements that are associated with our data link layer devices or data procedures for data link layer devices, that is point-to-point protocol. The three different phases yesterday I have told you. First is the link establishment. This link establishment, each PPP device sends LCP packets, link establishment or link control protocol packets to configure and test the data link. Then the second phase is optional. Yesterday I told you authentication is not at all required always. In case of SLIP protocol, no authentication was initially supported up to 1997, but after 1997 authentication was also incorporated in SLIP protocol. Then the authentication protocol, yesterday I have told you the PAP protocol and CHAP protocol. PAP protocol, password authentication protocol, and challenge handshake authentication protocol, CHAP protocol. The PAP protocol are the two authenticated authentication protocols that are used in PPP. Nowadays also we are utilizing password authentication protocol as well as challenge handshake authentication protocol. Then PPP sorry, then PPP sends NCP packets to choose and configure the network layer to be encapsulated and sent over the PPP data link. That is, the packets from the network layer are encapsulated and sent over the PPP data link. That is the third important configuration, the third important phase for session establishment. Yesterday, we have seen this particular configuration, the link establishment phase. The link establishment phase is the negotiation in between client as well as the server. Here, client, note the client as your home terminal and server as the terminal that is used by internet service provider. Then second phase is a optional phase, authentication phase. Then third phase is the network layer protocol phase. In case of password authentication protocol, how actually the process works out? The client tells the server that this is my username and password. Both username and password are unencrypted. Client sends username and password to the server. Server checks the username and password, verifies it, and if found correct, sends the message your username and password is correct. You can now use my resources. The client will get the information from the server whether your request for plain authentication is accepted or rejected. If authentication fails, server denies utilization of the resources. That is, you are not at all connected to the network of network. That is the simple configuration associated with password authentication protocol, PAP. Always dangerous to use unencrypted text to be sent over the public communication media. That is one of the drawbacks whenever we are talking about the PAP type of protocol, password authentication protocol under point-to-point protocol. The CHAP protocol, the client whenever gets connected, the server sends the challenge. The server sends the challenge. Here is a random text challenge. Please use your password to encrypt it. Server sends any random challenge to the client. Client has to insert his password to encrypt it. Then client provides the response. Password plus challenge. That is the result. Password plus challenge. That is the result. That is sent to the server. And whenever the server matches that response from the client, that is password plus challenge, that is the result of the client and the result of the server are said to be matched, and server sends the authentication information to the client. If that doesn't matches, then server denies utilization of the resources to the client. That is, you are not at all authorized to use the resources of the server which is connected to the various network of networks. This particular is the configuration that is typically utilized for CHAP protocol, Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol. I think this much information is sufficient to you regarding the PPP protocol, HDLC protocol and PPP type of protocol. Just show you the of sharing now. I will share you the animated demo for point-to-point protocol. Here, the user is connected to the system. This is a service provider. Point-to-point protocol, physical link is established in between the user. This may be the telephone line, this may be the optical fiber cable, this may be any other communication media which connects two different points of the data network. So we start. See, over time, what is actually happening? In the establishment state, the authentication request is sent as the second packet. First is authentication acknowledgement is sent from the system. Establishment phase is now complete. Then it's the networking state. It's the configuration request, the configuration acknowledgement. Once the networking state is established, that is, you are part of the network, then you can send your data. If your data is data exchange is completed, the termination request will be sent, the termination request will be acknowledged, and the networking phase will be over. This terminating phase dissociates the terminal from the network or ends the connection, point-to-point connection in between the user and the system. Just I will play that configuration request. In the establishing state, configuration request is sent. The configuration acknowledgement is sent from the system. User receives. User sends authenticate request. It's the optional phase. It's the authentication request is the optional phase. Authentication acknowledgement is sent from the system. It's the establishment phase is now complete. Now it's the networking state. Configuration of the network. The user is requesting for configuration. Configuration acknowledgement is sent from the system. Now the data can be sent. That means the data can be exchanged from user to system. If it's the file server, the server which are connected to the system sends those files to the user. That is, the data communication takes place in the networking state. Whenever the data communication ends, it's the terminating phase. The terminating phase, the user sends the terminating phase, and that termination is acknowledged by the system, and then system breaks the connection to the user by accepting the terminate acknowledgement, which is received by the user. This is point-to-point protocol. This particular point-to-point protocol, in the specified networking phase, the dynamic host configuration protocol actually allocates the IP address dynamically. Another configuration associated with the point-to-point protocol is the extension of point-to-point protocol that we are utilizing for our torrents. It's the peer-to-peer protocol, P2P protocol. This P2P protocol, the information is available on multiple devices. If one device fails to acknowledge the packet associated with that file, all other devices helps in speeding up the download for the specified file. That is peer-to-peer protocol, P2P protocol, that we are utilizing for our BitTorrent, NewTorrent, or torrent download. It's peer-to-peer protocol where all the peers are intelligent peers. These intelligent peers will help you in properly defining, but of course it's not at all part of the PPP protocol. But in addition to the information related to the networking phase, along with the networking phase, peer-to-peer configuration also can be supported. This peer-to-peer configuration, I will not go into the detail of P2P protocol. I will just show you the animation of P2P protocol. So peer-to-peer network. How it's different from conventional server-based network. Just I will play with a client server network. There is a single or a few dedicated machines providing a service. We'll consider a typical file sharing services. Red and blue client request a file from the server. This is the interconnecting configuration. Red and blue are receiving the files from the server, say netsil.jpg or index.html. That is the request response is netsil.jpg. Now jpg netsil.jpg is available for blue terminal as well as the red terminal. Now if the green and yellow wants the same file, they must get it from the server. They are requesting the server for the file. That particular file is now available to those additional terminals which are connected. Now one additional orange terminal is available. With a client server architecture, adding more clients adds more load to the server, which slows down the services for all clients. Suppose now server is not at all functioning. If server fails or cannot be reached, then the service provided is no longer available in the client server architecture. Even if the file is available to all the 4 nodes in the network, the request, all the terminals are requesting. Since the server is failed, all the requests are recycled. But in case of peer-to-peer network, there is no dedicated server, or every terminal is an intelligent terminal. Each node in the peer-to-peer network acts as both client and a server. This way, bandwidth and computing power are distributed. That is the biggest advantage. See now, the same example. Now, same example, file. Netsil has that file. That file is requested from the blue terminal. Now two nodes on the peer-to-peer network has same file. A node can get the file from either of these two nodes. Either of these, the yellow and green nodes both request the same file. Yellow and green nodes are now acting as the clients, while the red and blue are acting as the servers. Same file is now available. It's the proper utilization because this terminal has the file, same red terminal also has the file, blue terminal also has the file. So if the green terminal requests blue terminal, yellow terminal requests red terminal. Same file, but two different requests. Both the requests are fulfilled at the same instant of time. Now one more node is added in the peer-to-peer configuration. By adding this node, performance of the services is not at all affected because the load is distributed among all the peers instead of a single server. Now it's requesting. Red is not at all available. So it will request blue. If the file is available, blue will send it to the orange terminal. So even if one of the terminal fails, if one of the nodes fails, all the nodes are acting as the servers for the orange terminal. For the orange terminal, the file is available on all. If the path between the orange terminal and red terminal is the shortest path, the red terminal is providing, but if fails, then rest of the communication in the entire network is possible, and that's how P2P protocol works. Peer-to-peer protocol for torrents. The file is available on multiple terminals. 10% of the file can be downloaded. If the remaining part is not at all available, then remaining 90% part can be available from other peers. Other peers. That's why it's P2P protocol. That's how the torrent works. But it's not at all required for our syllabus. As an additional resource, I am giving this particular example associated with the P2P type of protocol. Our important study is mainly related to the point-to-point protocol, HDLC protocols that are used at the data link layer. Here actually we have finished all first 3 units from our syllabus. We have taken much more details, which were also actually not at all required in practice also, but this will help you to understand the concept associated with the data networking, how actually the information is shared. Already previously I have shown you the demo associated with the ARP protocol, Address Resolution Protocol. IP addresses can be assigned dynamically. They allow for hierarchical assignment of the addresses. IP addresses are used by software to communicate over the network. MAC addresses are the physical addresses. It's not practical for software to use these physical MAC addresses. The MAC addresses cannot be changed. They are permanently assigned. But the IP addresses can be assigned virtually. This particular demo I have already shown you. One important thing that is remaining is the dynamic host configuration protocol is used by any terminal to register itself on the network with an IP address. It does so by requesting a temporary IP address from a server called as a DHCP server. Here the green terminal, here no IP address is allocated. The terminal had a MAC address, that is permanent address. No IP address is allocated to the green terminal. Green terminal wants to register itself on the network, so it sends a request packet to DHCP server requesting an IP address. This, this computer then broadcasts the message DHCP discover with a destination address 255.255.255.255. That is, the message is sent using a UDP protocol to the port 546. What is that? We will see whenever we study the UDP protocol. That present, just remember, port number 546 is used to demultiplex the DHCP packets from the client side. The request received from the green computer is only processed by the DHCP server or the relay agent. The DHCP relay agent simply configured with the IP addresses of the DHCP server, which communicates the IP addresses to the specified terminal. Request from green is then given to DHCP server. It's asking that I am not at all having a IP address. So this DHCP server will allocate the IP address to this particular terminal. The relay agent then returns the information back to the requesting computer. Now the IP address is assigned. See here, 162.103.1.103. This is entirely a different address. A duplicate address is never assigned. DHCP server has already assigned the IP addresses in the specified range for one local area network. This is one local area network. It's a switch. Four different terminals are connected to this particular switch and four different IP addresses. See, the range of IP addresses is same. If the range of IP addresses is same, then only this particular terminal can communicate with remaining three terminals. If it's being allocated different range of IP address, then it can communicate only through DHCP server. But DHCP server must allocate the IP address in the same range. That's what is done for your terminal whenever internet service provider allocates an IP address. These are all different terminals, different clients. You are green terminal, you are the only client which want to register. So by using PPP over Ethernet protocol, your username and password is authenticated. Once your username and password is authenticated by the DHCP server, the DHCP server will allocate one IP address, one IP address in public domain now to the green terminal. And once the IP address is allocated to the terminal, then only the terminal is part of the network of network. That's how the DHCP server at the service provider side allocates the IP address to the home terminal. Say for the broadband users, same is done by the dial-up modem configuration using the PPP protocol. What will be there in the dial-up configuration? This green terminal will be connected to the modem. The modem will be connected to the telephone line. The telephone line gets connected to the modem rack at the service provider's end. One of the modem is selected, and that particular modem is connected to the server of the service provider. The dial-up modem dials one particular number. That particular number is the fixed number of your service provider. Whenever the modem detects the dial tone, detects the carrier, the specified number is dialed. The specified number, when received by the modem at the service provider end, will generate the password authentication packet to be sent by the client terminal to the server side. When the authentication is performed, first of all, link establishment, then the authentication. When the authentication is performed, then it allocates the IP address with the support of DHCP server. And that's how your PPP protocol. In case if you want the configuration to be seen for the dial-up modem, in for Windows 10 terminals also we have Internet Explorer. So just I will try sharing the Internet Explorer. Not Microsoft Edge, but I will go for Internet Explorer. If I go to settings of Internet Explorer, go to Internet options, go to connections, and see here, add. Show connection options. This computer is not set up to use. It's a dial-up. If I am having a dial-up modem or ISDN modem, I have to use this dial-up connection. Then I will dial a specific phone number, the phone number your ISP gave to you. This number will be dialed. The username and password are given to you. The username and password are given to you by the internet service provider. The type of connection. When you create it and press the dial button, your number will be dialed by the modem that is connected to your data terminal, and you are connected to the internet service provider. This particular configuration is typically utilized for the ISP. Typically for broadband, you can choose your configuration, modify the configuration, but at present, this much information is quite sufficient. I will go for the questions now. Any doubt related to whatever we have seen up till now? Any damn question? Can interact with patients. I'm not at all getting whether you are able to understand the concept or not. Are there any difficulties? Akanksha? Smita? Stop.